In this chapter, we are going to talk about those that I have determined that are the 4 pillars of a successful photographer. Now, some of these apply to any kind of photographer. The photographer of apples, of kids, of women or naked women. If you don't create these pillars for yourself, really doesn't matter what you're doing. You're just gonna be someone with a camera who shoots pictures. You can have fun. Why not? You can even take pictures of naked women, but you're not gonna be a successful photographer. You're not creating the right conditions for your career as a photographer to thrive. And some others apply especially to a nude art photographer because, of course, you are dealing with a very delicate subject. You're not just shooting a piece of bread. You are shooting a subject which is, as I said, in a very particular condition, who is very vulnerable in front of you, who can give you much, much more than a piece of bread can. But it also needs to be dealt with in a very special way. So let's start with the very first pillar of a successful photographer. This is what my photography teacher taught me in 1998, I think. It's the very first thing. It is so paramount. What do you think makes a very, very good photographer? This is what he asked us. And I completely agree with him. The most important thing that separates a photographer, okay photographer, or an amateur photographer from a really good, a professional, a famous photographer even, is recognizability. If, as a photographer, you can create a kind of image that only you can create, or that it makes you immediately recognizable, doesn't have to be super hard to replicate that kind of photography, but if someone sees that picture and says, this is Helmut Newton for sure, or this is Mario Picaluga, I can tell that this is the picture from Mario Picaluga, that's an amazing achievement. Because if you can take pictures that make you recognizable, you become a brand. You create something that only you can create. And a client or a woman that creates this immediate association between the fact that you are not like any other photographer. You are special. This is huge. This should be like the first goal. It should be the destination of any photographer, any kind of photographer. Now, how do you achieve this? You have to do a lot of experiments. At least, usually people have to, because most people don't have super clear ideas when they start. In any field, but especially in photography. When you start as a photographer, because taking pictures is very easy, you just pick a camera and you take pictures and the pictures are there. It's not like a violin that just to make a note with a violin, it takes an immense effort, so much practice. With a camera, it's very easy to think that you can take good pictures when actually you really can't. You just can press a button. That doesn't make you a good photographer. So we have this illusion that we think that we know what kind of pictures we are good at taking, but it generally isn't true. It generally requires hundreds of thousands of attempts, hundreds of thousands of clicks, hundreds of thousands of going through the process of experimentation, learning how to frame the camera, the picture, the blocking, the use of the light, deciding if you like natural light or if you like studio light, deciding if you want to tell a story with your pictures, if you want the pictures to rely one on the other, and so create long photographic stories, or if you want to concentrate on one incredibly precisely crafted picture, or if you want to do conceptual photography instead of emotional photography. So to say it in more easy to understand words, do you want to concentrate on a concept that you have in your head and it really doesn't matter what the subject looks like? Or do you really want to take a picture of that person? You want to take the emotions out of that very particular person? Or there is so many other aspects that you can experiment with. Do you want to shoot with a full frame sensor camera? Do you want to shoot with a middle format camera? Do you want to shoot with a mirrorless with a smaller sensor? Do you want to shoot with a phone? There is no crime in shooting with a phone. As I said, any tool is just a tool. If the tool is what you need for your craft, doesn't matter if it's a phone. There are so many other things that you can concentrate on, so many creative choices that you make. And there is really no way of really creating this recognizability if you don't try many roads. And then there is post-production. Oh my God, I'm getting a headache just thinking about it. There is so many ways that you can take a picture and transform it. You can apply such different color schemes to them. You can crop them in a certain way. You can do so many things to images after you shot them that really that's, I would say, 40% of being a photographer. I don't know, it's just an arbitrary number, but it's really a big part of it. And that takes years. You can spend years learning to use Lightroom, Photoshop to give a distinct character to your pictures. And then there is also another aspect which is often overlooked. I take thousands of pictures when I shoot a woman. An aspect which is incredibly important, which pictures I choose among those. Because I shoot so many, if someone else were to go through my pictures and pick the ones that he likes, it would probably come out as a completely different photographer, even if I'm the one who shot them. But if you choose different pictures from among those that you shot and you edit them differently, this is going to create such different results. It's worth stressing this, because this is a huge part of being a photographer nowadays. When it was the era of the film, this aspect was a bit more relegated to the darkroom guy, which in the case of black and white, it was very often also the photographer. Now there is not the dark room anymore, now there is the light room. And speaking of this, you can be the type of guy that does very minimal retouching to the pictures. He just does color correction, he maybe removes pimples from models. Or you can be the type of guy that completely transforms the pictures, that can sever the head of a model and put another head on that body. As I said, the possibilities are infinite, but you have to find your own unique way. You have to find a style that is mostly you, and you cannot really afford to be all over the place with different styles. Maybe you think, oh yeah, I like this kind of photography, but I also want to do this. Well, in that case, you will have probably to create different identities, because the worst thing, or maybe it's not the worst, but one thing that if you go, for example, on an Instagram profile of a photographer, and if you see that he shoots very different pictures one from the other, that there isn't really a common thread, that there isn't something that he is really concentrating on, that profile is distracting, is not something that really hits you. There is too much randomness. So it's very important that you decide, okay, I am the type of photographer, who, now I'm gonna use me as an example, who is very emotional. I like to shoot a woman and I like to concentrate on her. I don't really want to say anything special in my picture. It's not like, for example, Helmut Newton. Let's take Helmut Newton. He was taking pictures which were mostly conceptual, in my opinion. It was almost always portraying the debauchery of the rich people. This is what you can see in basically all his pictures. But it really didn't matter what kind of model was in that picture. That model was just a tool that he was using to portray an idea that he had. While in my case it's the opposite. I'm shooting a picture of Irina. I want to take the best of Irina out. Irina is the most important thing in my picture. There is an environment around her, but the environment is at her service. And so I take emotional pictures of naked women. How naked are they? This is another very important chapter. Are we going towards eroticism or... So what do I want to do with these pictures? Do I want to arouse the watcher, or do I just want to show the nudity in a very classical, in a very formal way? Like statues of the past. They are naked, but they don't create excitement in who is watching them. For me, it's different. For me, I want to transmit the arousal. I want people to look at these pictures and say, oh God, I wish I was in that situation. Being with that woman in that moment must be really amazing, and I wish I was there. And then what other things? I can use a short lens, a wide angle, or I could use a telephoto lens. The wide angle allows me to get very close to the subject, and so creates this sensation that you have when you really are close to a woman, when you are getting intimate with her. So do I want to create intimacy, or is more aesthetics? So I'm using a longer lens, making the features of this woman look as perfect as they can, like in a Playboy editorial. These are all choices that you have to do at some point. What else do I do? I don't do much retouching. For me, if I start to retouch the models too much, they become too perfect and they are not those women that we can actually be together anymore. They become ideal. And so that's not what I want. I'm just gonna remove a pimple because maybe this woman has got a pimple from the day before and it's not really part of her. But if she's got stretch marks, if she's got small wrinkles, then of course it's always a choice that I make on the moment if I want to remove a special wrinkle or not. But in general, I want people to look at the pictures and think, no, this picture is real. Nothing has been done to this picture. Inevitably, there will always be a bit of editing, otherwise some pictures can just look lazy. But this is what I personally want. While other photographers maybe because they come from advertisement background, they want the picture to be spotless. It's their choice, really. Depends what you want to communicate with your pictures. Depends on the road that you've chosen. And you will have to pick a road. You will have to experiment. Oh my God, you will have to experiment so much. You will have to try so many things that at some point you will decide, or someone else will notice, because maybe you have not noticed yet, say, you know, you're really good when you take these kind of pictures, so do this. Don't do that. That's not you. What I said should be your paramount goal. It's, as I said, one of the 4 pillars. It's probably the first one. It's probably the most important. The second pillar of a successful photographer and of a great photographer is creative control, or in another way we could say that it is intentionality. Everything that you see in this picture is there because he wanted it, not because it just happened and he was lucky to capture. Now, of course, sometimes that's exactly what happens, but you have to convince who is watching the pictures that you have control on the subject, that you have control on what was happening, and that the picture, the final result, is like that because everything that you see in the picture is the result of an idea. Now, of course, this is really hard to achieve because you have to be convinced of what you're doing, you have to have experience, you have to be the controlling type of person. You have to try so many experiments, trial and error, knowing what can go wrong and knowing what can go right, and learn to make order in the chaos. Now, there is no easy way to get to this place. It's just like the previous chapter. You have to do so much experiments. You have to become confident. You have to become the kind of photographer that's taken a lot of pictures, that's been in very different scenarios, and is capable of controlling what happens. I'm going to make things a bit easier for you, as long as this is what it looks like on the final result. Because if we were to start taking pictures knowing that we have to do everything with intention, we will probably get too scared to even start. And I would not have started, because as of today, I still improvise a lot. This is because of the way that I work and because I'm very good at post-production. I know that with post-production, I can fix or I can create some order in the chaos. Now, I know that this is not what is usually taught in schools. You should learn to plan things in advance. But I think that if you are working with naked women, if you're doing emotional pictures, if you're trying to take out something which is very hard to predict actually, unless you already know the model very well, but usually that's not the case. I'm more often than not shooting a woman for the first time, and maybe I don't shoot her ever again. So I don't know what she's capable of, I don't know what she's good at, I don't know what she's bad at. So what I will do is shoot a lot of pictures of her. Of course, when you have years of experience taking pictures, many processes become automatic. Framing the picture becomes an automatic process. I don't even know how to describe how you're supposed to compose an image. I just do it automatically. And I take so many pictures that I know that some of them will not be amazing, but there will be some of them that will work. Because I know my limits. I know that I have to rely on this, and I just embrace it. So I take a lot of pictures. This is good also for another reason, because in the type of nude photography that I do, is good to have like a sequence. It's good to have like a story that you can tell, because in the nude photography world, you have to create sort of editorials with several pictures in them that show the motion, that show that something is happening, show that maybe a woman is undressing, and you have to show not all of them, but you have to give an illusion of a process, an illusion of a movement. So this approach makes things easier for me when I want to sell my pictures. But it also helps me because when you want to capture something unique, when you want to capture something fleeting, that's only there for a tenth of a second, and then you cannot capture it anymore. The only way to do that is to really use your camera as a machine gun. This is what I do. Other photographers do something completely opposite. In the end, it depends on what's your style is. But in my style, I prefer the model to keep moving until something very special happens. And I know that it's almost impossible to repeat. It's almost impossible to take that picture again. No other photographer will probably be able to take the exact picture again, because it's something that's not a pose. This is, maybe I should have mentioned it in the previous chapter, this is also a type of factor that determines your recognizability. What do? Do you take pictures which are like bodyscapes in a very conventional pose, or a pose which wants to really put the accent on the pose itself? Or do you want to concentrate on the gaze, on the micro expression of the face, which are... The face can do a million times more the things that the rest of the body can do. So do you want to do one or the other? And in general, control is something that can be maybe synthesized in this example. Take this picture. Does it look intentional to you? Well, if the horizon was just slightly slanted, people would just think, oh, that's annoying. That's annoying because he didn't really want to do that. He wanted to make it straight, but he was not capable. That's supposed to be straight, but it's just slightly that you know that he just failed an attempt. While if it's very slanted, then of course it's intentional. Nobody would do that unintentionally. That's a decision. That's a creative decision. Then maybe it's not. Because using that example, I can tell you that I was not trying to make the horizon slanted. I was just too excited by the situation and the horizon was not straight. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna make it even more slanted, so it's gonna look intentional. And exactly that's the result.